NESI, privatization in 2013, 2014, I would say that everyone will acknowledge that the results have been mixed. Moving to private sector, there are things like regulation, policy clarity, and even the consumers getting an understanding that this is now a private utility. We have a service-based tariff that allows users to pay for electricity based on the hours of supply, which is more accountable and transparent. We've initiated the National Mass Metering Program that should resolve lingering issues of citizens complaining about a lack of metering. There are a number of programs aimed at improving the distribution sector of the space, which most of the complaints on privatization come through. We recently worked to ensure stability in 5 discos that were taken over by their lenders. We are working to set up guidelines, or we have set out guidelines through the BPE for them to be reprivatized to private capable individuals away from the banks. And I think there's some big success stories like the generation companies. If you look at Mainstream, when they took over, I think Kayenji and Jeba dams, they were only doing about 400 megawatts. Today they're doing more than 1,000. What a private sector-led industry allows us to do, at least on the generation and the distribution side, is to get financing. But the policies have to be clear to attract that investment and financing. And I think Nigeria, after almost a decade now, we're finally getting some of those policies right, and I think we anticipate high growth, sustainable growth and investment in the sector going forward. The Buhari administration particularly, and more recently being led by the Honorable Minister of Power, Engineer Abubakar, and other stakeholders, have really done a lot on policies and programs. One of the big policies of this administration, the initiation of the service-based tariff that allows us to have payments for power based on hours of supply. The National Mass Metering Program will sustainably eliminate the metering gap, hopefully over the near term. We're moving into the phase 1 or the second phase of that initiative, having completed 1 million meters on the first phase. There's 4 million more planned on the second phase and another 2 million on the third phase. The payment waterfall and payment discipline mechanism that is being administered through the CBN allows for all revenues in the sector to come into a central pool and then be distributed amongst the different stakeholders. So when discos used to collect money, it used to go to their accounts, then they determined how much to pay. Now it goes to central accounts, and then from those central accounts, disbursements occur. With the National Mass Metering Program, the service-based tariff, and the payment discipline mechanism, the sector moved from 40 billion naira a month of collections to about 70 billion naira at its peak. Additionally, if you look at last year's 5% growth rate by the Nigerian economy, the year-over-year growth during that period, the second quarter where we had the 5% growth rate, year-over-year growth for the electricity sector was about 86% at that time. Recently it was reported that the collections or the revenue in this, the first half revenue of 393 billion by the discos was the highest since privatization. Now, This has not equated directly immediately in incremental power, but you can imagine a sector that has been established now in a sustainable economic and commercial framework will attract investment. Recently saw that the issues with Ahmad Disco have been resolved by the National Council on Privatization. So Geometric has taken over that integrated power project from Enugu Disco to complete it. That should add about 200 megawatts to distributable power. Yola Disco was reprivatized. If there was no appetite for investment in the sector, you wouldn't see that happen. And Afam Power Cluster, Afam 345, were recently sold to Transcorp for about 102 billion naira. So once you see investment coming back into the sector, that implies that the foundation of the commercial framework is working, and we think that we've done a good job on those policies. And additionally, the government is using its sovereign capability to provide financing to the sector. FEC recently approved a $500 million disrupt facility with the World Bank, which will be the distribution recovery program. It will give DISCOs concessionary loans to be able to improve their networks further. The central bank has been providing lending through NEMSEF for the sector. I think right now perhaps there's about 200 billion plus of capex facilities that the central bank has extended to both transmission and distribution. And as you know, the Presidential Power Initiative, being partnered with Siemens, has a transmission and a distribution component. So on one side, we're improving policies. On the other, we're getting enough financing to at least jumpstart the sector so that over time, sustainably, organically, the DISCOs and the GENCOs and even the Transmission Company of Nigeria can effectively continue to invest in the network to improve supply. My office doubles as the secretariat of the Power Sector Reform Working Group, which is the coordination group set up by the presidency to provide policy direction for the sector. It includes the vice president as its chair, the power minister, the finance minister, the central bank governor, as well as the governor of Kaduna representing the states. I'm the secretary of that group and the chairman of NERC, and the director general of the Bureau of Public Enterprise also participate in those sessions. So we hope that that working group structure will be adopted by subsequent administrations because it allows for coordination across the sector. Post-privatization, many players have to participate to make the sector work, and it's not only something that the Power Ministry or the Finance Ministry or NERC can do, or BPE by themselves. So we've seen that after the president set up the working group at the presidency, there was now a ministerial working group set up at the ministry level to also improve harmony in their agencies. Now, from a sustainability standpoint, all of these programs that we've been working on particularly have commercial or government bank funding sources that will be in existence subsequent to the administration. And we hope that with those funding sources, all that's needed for a subsequent administration is to continue to allow for the execution to happen. And I'm sure that with the benefit of programs like the National Mass Metering Program, the completion of the intervention on Siemens, and others that this government has started, that any subsequent government, and we hope to have continuity within the current APC framework, any future government will be able to quickly take up those actions and either allow them to continue or scale them up as necessary. I think it's a great initiative. Even when sectors don't perform, there are some individuals or groups or companies that excel. And I think recognizing them through an objective process is always something that encourages others to do well. The sector has had a negative sentiment. I think yesterday at the cabinet retreat, the vice president described it like a skyscraper, and you have to have a strong foundation, then it can build up quickly. I think what the Buhari administration has done is set a very strong foundation, correcting some of the challenges of privatization. And we're going to build a skyscraper in Nigeria on the power sector going forward. So I am encouraged by the efforts of the Power Sector Award concept, and definitely something that I think is a best practice that needs to be continued even into the future. Hopefully we can make it an annual thing. My name is Ahmad Zakari. I'm the Special Advisor to the President on Infrastructure. I also am the Secretary of the Presidential Power Sector Working Group, and I will be attending the Power Sector Awards coming up in 2022. Thank you.